Because we may get no leave back if we switch to.
And there's no council meeting.
No, actually.
Oh, that's good.
You were excited about it.
All right, can we get things rolling here? I think we'll have to.
Are we recording?
They have quite big body. YouTube? Yeah.
A little delayed.
It's a little delayed. There we go.
Technology's wonderful, right?
All right, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, moving along here. Consideration and approval of the agenda. I've got a couple things I'd like to add, but
Are we supposed to do roll call since some of us are attending remotely?
ooh, I don't know, but we can do that. Let's just Kent Bombard, Mayor.
Kyle Palmer, council member.
Dan Swanson, council member.
Thank
Marcy
you.
Peterson, city administrator.
All right. Now we can move along to consideration and approval of the agenda. I would like to add two things to the agenda. I would like to add 8.4, discussion and possible action regarding contracted building official, and 8.5, acknowledging the resignation of City Council member Gina Petty. And if anybody else has anything they would like to add or change.
Nothing here.
All right, would someone like to make a motion to approve with those two additions?
So moved.
Motion by Dan, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Kyle. We'll proceed with a roll call vote. Kyle?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes, aye.
I will also vote yes, that motion carries. Moving on then to public forum. This is an opportunity for citizens to present items to the council that are not on the agenda. Each presentation is limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 15 minutes set aside. If your item needs follow-up from the city, staff will arrange for that. If you'd like to step forward to public forum, please make your way to the podium, state your name and address, and council will hear your concerns. I will ask again, if you'd like to speak in public forum, please make your way to the podium and council will hear your concerns. And I will ask for a third and final time if you'd like to step forward for public forum. Hearing none, we will move on to item number 5.1. This is a presentation from Ellers regarding our water, sewer rate study.
working great. This will be the one that you sent yesterday. Or the one.
Yeah, no, we'll do the sewer one. Yeah, the other one was just in case we wanted to revisit.
Is there a mouse? Is the correct one?
It would be the one that came from Christina on Tuesday.
Do you want me to forward this one back to you, Marcy?
Oh, no.
Yep.
Right here?
Yeah, they're the same thing. One's a PDF and one's an actual slide deck.
Which one would you prefer?
How you gonna run it? Is it gonna run on there?
Yeah.
Then just maybe run the slide deck. That's fine.
I apologize.
Might have to do the
Okay, repeat it.
Okay.
Right, Jason.
All set? Yeah, no worries. All right. Well, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Again, Jason Arswold with Ellers, municipal advisor. We, as you know, have been working on this rate study. Started with the water portion of this, and here tonight to talk about the sewer portion of the study. But if you want to jump ahead, Marcy, here first, what we're going to do just in general, why did you want to undertake this particular study? Well, the big picture reason is really to ensure the financial sustainability of the water and sewer utilities. You want to make sure you have enough cash in there to, fund reserves, pay all the debt obligations you have going forward, and what we've spent a lot of time talking about is covering future long-term capital needs as well. And then we'll talk about the rate structures and really setting up a rate structure that is equitable across all the different user classes. And so we talked a bit about that with the water piece, and we're going to start by just kind of revisiting that a little bit, because I think, as you recall, jump to the next one. There were some questions. We went through the rate structure with the recommended rate structure with the water utility, and if you recall, we changed the fixed charge for particular meters based on particular sizes, and this again was really trying to be equitable with their particular capacity associated with the system. And then we changed and made alterations to the tiers as well. We moved the tiers for residential limits. We decreased those slightly so they would more quickly get into upper tiers, which again, the idea they're promoting additional conservation. And then eliminated the tiering system for multifamily and commercial usage because they get into those tiers much quicker, and this was created a more equitable sharing of how this should really go with respect to your rate structure. And then in this case, if you recall, irrigation was going to be all at the third tier rate. Again, that's non-essential water use, that's peak demand. And so, again, promoting conservation, putting that in the third tier. If you jump to the next one, the point of that whole particular study, again, was that we left the revenue that you're generating from the system neutral. So with that revised rate structure that was proposed, there was no new revenue being created, but with the change in the rate structure, it did shift kind of the who pays right into that total pot in a more equitable manner, as I said. And so that was accomplished by doing the things that I just mentioned. We were projecting in that particular study that, there's enough cash balance in the fund that it wouldn't require you to raise rates within the study period, which is a 10-year period, and you would still be able to fund all the capital that was identified in that project. Now, what we didn't do is put anything into that study to pay for future PFAS mitigation. There's just uncertainty around how that would be paid for, how much it would cost, and so there isn't anything in the water study that deals with that in the future. If that became a cost that you needed to incur in the future, then this projection wouldn't hold up. There would need to probably be future increases. One of the things we heard coming out of that, if you want to jump to the next one, is that you had an interest in trying to provide relief to the commercial users to a greater extent maybe than we had presented with the structure that we prepared. And so this is a chart, and I don't expect you to remember this, but one of the things that we tried to do to accomplish that goal was to look at the monthly base rate based on the equivalent charges that are there based on those meter sizes. And so the thought was, well, maybe we could try to reduce how much is coming from that fixed charge from those larger users and those larger meters. And so prepared an option that would accomplish that. So those folks with larger meters would have a smaller base charge and therefore would have a lower overall utility bill charge as well. Still try to maintain revenue neutral, and so what had to happen then is then those other users had to see an increase in that charge in order to maintain that revenue neutral position. If you jump to the next slide, Marcy, this is a comparison. So the meter sizes are there, and this was the current base rate in blue there. When we came to you in the past iteration of this is the one in the middle. So the 5/8 inch was $17.50 on up to the 4-inch at $437.50. The option 2 that I just showed you, what that would do is it would reduce those larger meter tiers, or not tiers, meter classes to be a little bit lower, but that necessitated an increase slightly in the other meter sizes, the 5/8 inch and the 1 and 1.5 inch in particular. So that was just, again, to sort of maintain a revenue neutral outcome for the water fees that would be charged there. And then if you kind of jump ahead one more slide, and this again is just recapping the water, looking at what those impacts look like. So what you can see there is under that first option, there were still increases in like the low commercial and residential user. Really, that's just a function of the tiers being adjusted and the cost being shifted. Frankly, under the old rate structure, commercial was subsidizing residential to some extent. And I think this is a more equitable reflection. I'm sorry, reverse is true. The residential, commercial was subsidizing the residential. So what you see here is when that gets adjusted, residential pays a little more. Commercial, for high user commercial on the bottom, you see those costs increasing still for the large. Well, in total, decreasing, right, for the large users there in option 1, but decreasing even further in the second option 2 scenario. So try to accomplish what was discussed at the last meeting by providing some additional relief to those larger commercial users. But again, to maintain revenue neutral position, you have to see a corresponding increase for some of the other users that's in there as well. So those are options to consider. We can, before we dive into the sewer piece of this, is there any questions about that or discussion that you want to have about the water part of this?
Not so much discussion as a point of conversation. I have added, we had a high level of copper in our water system in this last water analysis. Later on in the council meeting, there's going to be, and my thought is I'll be asking some questions, or council will be asking some questions about mitigation strategies from our engineer to see what we're at, where we're at, and where we should go. So I think this is still kind of in the liquid phase, and I know you mentioned the PFAS mitigation, so that kind of may go hand in hand with if we need to upgrade filtration or what needs to happen. So that may come up in the conversation at some point in this meeting.
Sure. And so the model here now is set up. The rate structure, if it's something that you want to see change in this manner, it could be in place, and then it's very easy to understand what the impact would be of adding another capital expenditure. For example, you can easily see what would need to happen with the rates if you were to add that. There, if you recall, there were several placeholders because we didn't have necessarily. We had a few projects that were specifically identified, but there are dollars in this plan that you can still pay for with cash without having to issue debt for certain capital needs. So maybe some of those placeholders become more solidified into doing the thing that you all need to do there. But as we know, there are these unknowns. And so while these are projections, things might change, right? And I think, the thing to know is if this one of these options gets put in place, it's revenue neutral, yes, but also what we're showing then is that you wouldn't really need to increase rates unless there were some additional capital needs or operating costs exceeded some of these projections for the foreseeable future. And there's, I know, some question about, well, isn't there a lot of money sitting in the water fund? And you have a healthy fund balance, and that's a good thing. What it means is that in this plan, you are able to do the capital improvements that you need to do without necessarily issuing debt. And by the end of this plan period, in the 10-year period, that cash balance is being spent down. So it's being gradually spent down to the 10-year end of the plan, where it just meets what your working capital need is. So you are using that fund balance that does exist. So. Other questions?
Dan, Kyle, any questions?
Okay. Well, moving on to the sewer side then. We can jump to the next one there, the approach piece. So this is similar in some ways, but we do have the added layer here of some folks that you're serving from outside of city limits that are through agreements to take in sewer treatment. So really, we are looking at all the customer usage data. And we start with that. You have contracts for those outside customers that we also took a look at and reviewed. Looked at how much revenue you need to operate the facility and for future capital. Again, we'll look at that in detail, but again, there's some unknowns there. Look at where rates are, kind of recommend rates and annual revenue needs, look at how that's going to impact users, and then again, prepare that 10-year projection. I will say that in this case, to pay for all of the things that are showing up here on a going forward basis, this one is not revenue neutral. This actually requires slightly more revenue, not a ton more, but it does require more revenue to stay on that sustainable path. And we'll talk more about that and how that's going to impact folks. I'm going to jump ahead there. Again, just like in the water thing, we're doing a 10-year projection, so we need to make some assumptions about what's going to happen going forward, right? So we've got 2 to 3% increases in expenses annually. Interest income that you earn on your fund balance, that's conservatively projected at 1%. We've incorporated the capital to the extent that we are aware that it exists, and there'll be a chart about that. But this is funding about $3 million in future capital. There's one large project that we can talk about that isn't included at all. And then inflating those costs at about 3% annually. And then looking back at 12 whole months of usage data. So the period that we used to establish this was looking at all of 2024, because that's what we had, a one full year of data to utilize. So that's what we did there. So just a quick breakdown of how the budget. This is the 26 budget, and so we're going to kind of be moving back and forth between the 24 data and the 26 budget. So just kind of be aware of that. But about 512,000 of this is operating cost, and that's important when it comes to the agreements that you have with those outside entities, and we'll get into that. About 115,000 is the cash funded capital that I mentioned. That's the 2026 amount of that $3 million that I mentioned is funded in the whole study, so it's just a portion of it, and that amount varies each year, so just be aware of that. And then current debt that's attached to the sewer fund, again, is that 173,990 number. So that's really how when the dollars come in, that's how they're being deployed, through the utility. Well, the next slide is a lot of detail, and it's hard to read on the board here. I mentioned $3 million in capital, so just like in the water fund, so in the near term, there are a couple of equipment and lift station things that are out there and we're aware of. So those are in here already. So the 26 amount, the 115,000, that's what that is. But on a going forward basis, just like in the water fund, there may be street reconstructions that have to happen. And so we've just put every other year $400,000 in there. That would be the sewer portion of a potential street reconstruction project. If you don't do those projects, then you don't need that capital. It would maybe be available for some other purpose, like maybe you brought up with the copper. That's one way that could work out. And then there are placeholders down at the bottom, about $100,000 every year starting in 2028. And that, again, not an identified project associated with that, but just knowing that there are going to be things that you need to replace or fix or add just as a matter of course over the next decade. Probably this is a little light. We know that there's a sewer pond project that's out there that needs to be done. But right now, as we talked about it, the thought was that you'll undertake it as grant funds are available. And if that worked out in that manner, well, then, there wouldn't be any additional impact here. So we haven't built it in. But if, as you revisit this and, the funding and the need becomes more defined, then that's a project that if there are a city portion of that needs to be paid for through the utility fund, then that should be added here and see how that impacts what future rates would need to be. So while we are raising additional revenue here, we are holding those rates constant again, and just based on the fact that capital is kind of fixed the way it is in this table. So if that changes, then the need for rate increases would change as well. I'm going to jump to the next one. So one of the big findings here is we've got those outside customers, and those agreements really do talk about the need to be looking at those every single year. And it isn't just once a year, it's really kind of twice a year. So it's you're looking at what you're trying to do, and I have a chart that shows us how you're allocating those users' proportionate share of the cost of operations and maintenance of the utility. And those agreements clearly define what that looks like. So you're doing an annual calculation to determine what that is, and that's totally based on flow. So how much of the total flow is coming from those entities, and whatever that percent of the total is their required amount that they need to contribute. And so you do that on a budgetary basis, and then the contracts call for a look back. So you get to the end of the year, and you look, you say, okay, we budgeted X, we were either over or under our budget, and there's a true up that's made according to these agreements at the end. Either they contribute more or they get a refund based on what actually happened in the calendar year. So that's an exercise that has to be done every year. And then there is a provision that talks about allowing for allocating capital costs of the treatment facility, but the agreements aren't real clear about how that is supposed to happen. And so you'll see, as we've shown in here, we don't We don't have any of that capital cost of that system, of that pie chart, currently allocated to those outside customers. And we really think that's something that would require clarification in the contract and or a lot of engineering to portion out what portion of their usage is considered capital, per the terms of those agreements. So just, we're operating here under the assumption that those agreements aren't going to change in the near term, but there are some things that could be clarified in there when and if they ever come up again for negotiation. So again, as I mentioned, these need to be looked at on a regular basis. So I want to go 2 slides ahead. I want to talk about this one first. So this chart is an attempt, and if you look at just the top one for now, I know it's a lot of information, is that calculation of what the customers should be contributing. Okay, so you've got your, inside the city folks, so a few handful of flat rate customers, but then it's those 3 outside customers on the system. Okay, and so I told you we looked at the 24 flow data, right? And so this is the flow data as broken out amongst those various users. And so it's all right there. So you had 118 million, but it's in thousands here. But if you can see there, it's broken up by percentage as well. So 65% of the flow is from customers inside the city. And then as you look down to the outside customers, the Cross Lake, Henriette, and Pokegama, you've got 16.3, 1.3, and 16.7. And so it's as simple as that you apply those percentages to the budgeted operations and maintenance of the utility, right? So you can see there what those contributions of the 512,000, 983 allocated O&M budget looks like, right? That's how much, just per the agreement, each of those entities would need to contribute, and then the corresponding rate over to the right, that for O&M, right? So that's the rate that they would need to pay to come up with making up that O&M budget. And then the table below, as I mentioned, same thing, but how do we allocate the the capital cost, right? And because the agreements aren't real clear about how it's allocated, it's all allocated right now to the inside customers and those flat rate customers. So they are adding that $5.02 to the rate of those folks that are inside. And so that's how the current rate structure that I'm going to show you is set up. But if you, I'm sorry to keep going back, we go back up one. So when we looked at all of that, and I mentioned that we are looking at the need for new revenue here, but none of that new revenue needs to come from the customers inside the city. And the reason is because the current rate being charged those outside customers isn't as much as what it ought to be for those agreements. And so by increasing those rates to where they're supposed to be, you will by default then raise that additional revenue that's necessary. So we can leave those inside customers at zero over that 10-year study period. But again, that needs to be looked at as we go forward here. I mentioned the fact that this study funds $3 million in capital over the next 10 years. That number changes dramatically, then this will not hold true. That'll need to change. All that capital right now is cash funded. So this plan that we have does not rely on the issuance of any debt. So again, the sewer fund does have cash in it, but that's cash that you've built up over time that is now available for you to undertake improvements without issuing debt that has an interest component attached to it. So that's a good thing. And just like in the water fund, we project out over 10 years, that cash balance is being spent on. I have a chart that'll show that to what we recommend sort of the working capital balance be within the utility fund, and we'll talk more about that. All right, so if we jump 2 ahead, here's kind of what go down. No, other way. Yep, and then go past this into the next table.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. So this is what based on this study, the rates will look like. So existing rates, that $9.30 for inside customers, that doesn't change. And then the outside customers, those are all adjusted per that calculation that I just went through. That is how it all should be per those agreements that are already in place. So this is not changing any terms associated with those agreements. It's just applying the methodology to distribute the costs in accordance with how they're already drafted. And then, as I mentioned, the rate is higher for those inside customers because of that challenge with how to allocate capital within that agreement. Now, arguably, when and if there are things added to the treatment facility, there I think still probably is a mechanism to have those outside entities pay for a portion of that, but that'll all have to be engineered and allocated in accordance with those agreements. And again, they're written in a way that's fairly unclear, so there's a challenge with all of that as well. So yeah, the outside rates are O&M only, as I mentioned, that $4.31. And the plan, again, not revenue neutral. There's additional funds being raised here to help pay for the future increase in cost of the system, but also the future capital of the $3 million that I talked about. Does that all make sense? Because that's kind of the big takeaway from the whole study. Are there questions about that? Okay. All right, so just, we look at sample impacts here. So, these are monthly contributions. So they're increasing, pretty dramatically for those outside entities. But again, arguably they haven't been paying probably what they ought to have been, in the years prior. So while those increases are large, this is consistent with what they should be paying per the agreement. And we did look at how many folks are on the systems there in each of those, and the per household or per customer charge, while those numbers are dramatic, aren't, I don't think terrible. I think we were in the, $10 a month range or something like that when you break it down by total, right, at the newly adjusted rate. So I think yeah, Pokegama had about 800 and some, right, folks, and Cross Lake slightly less, and the Henriette was tiny. I know that was a lot smaller, but so there is a big jump, again, consistent with what they're supposed to be paying for the agreement. This is the chart that I mentioned. So the blue bars are how much cash is in the sewer fund, and the bottom shaded area is what we think you probably ought to have just as on a working capital basis. Again, so that's just funding next year's operations and half the debt service. That blue shaded area can change if you have more capital expenses, if you issue more debt to pay for those capital expenses, and you have more annual debt service, that could go up. But as I mentioned, we're not saying that there is going to be any of that, and all the capital, the $3 million, is cash funded. So you can see cash increasing slightly, right, into 2026 there, which again is because this isn't revenue neutral that we're proposing here, and then that gets drawn down, unevenly, albeit because of the way that those capital expenditures are planned in there, but eventually down to where the cash in the fund is meeting that working capital balance, right? So if there's, concerns about, well, what are we doing with all this money? You're using it to pay for future needs of the system. That's what you're doing. And by the end of this 10-year period, again, that cash meets those working capital needs. All right, so in terms of next steps, again, just feedback. If there are options on this that you would like to see, then, there is, again, an adoption of what the rates are, the rate structures, and the actual rates themselves. Again, the rate structure, just trying to get that equitability piece, and then the actual rates themselves, making sure you're raising enough revenue for the sustainability of the system. And then looking at this annually, and then I think the other kind of little caveats there are, to the extent that there are future capital needs, and it sounds like you're already talking about some potential ones, and this happens all the time. The second you put this in place, you realize you need, a giant improvement, and it's not uncommon, but that's the reason why you would look at this on an annual basis. You have a tool now, and we're kind of playing around, and we were showing them you can, plug a number in, and it'll spit right out on the other end exactly what those impacts would look like. And so it's very easy now with that tool to understand the impacts of some of the decisions that you'll need to make on those utilities. And then, as I mentioned, just updating this annually as you look at it. So I'll stop, and I'm happy to go in any more detail or answer questions that you have about this.
Thank you, Jason. Questions from council members?
Just an opinion, but it seems like formulating a much more thorough capital plan would benefit setting the rates for us. Am I understanding that correctly? Because we're kind of using placeholders and ideas of what we have for capital improvements, but if we had a more solidified capital plan, it would allow us to hone in on what the rate structure might look like, more solidified. Am I understanding that correctly?
That mayor, members of council, yeah, that's always the case, right? The more certainty you can have there, the more targeted you can be with what those rates look like. But as I understood it from our conversations, there's enough uncertainty around the scope of some of these future capital needs, where some of the money is going to come from. Some of it might be like state allocations or grants, that it's sometimes it's better to set your rates based on some assumptions so that you're at least building in the equitability here, for example, on the water side, and then also making sure that the outside customers on the sewer side are actually paying what they should, right? So there's a reason to move ahead on that basis. And then what we talked about is, as you know more, you can always fine tune. And so I don't think it's a reason to not set a structure and a rate right now, but I do think it's a thing to continue to look at and then bring that in to this and fine tune this as the years go by.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Perfect. Thank you,
Okay.
Jason.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
All right, next we're on to item number 6 on the agenda, the consent items. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent items?
I'll move it.
Motion by Dan, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kyle. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. Kyle?
Aye.
Dan?
I
I will also vote yes, that motion carries. All right, next we'll move along to old business. Item number 7.1, 2026 Stauber Community Project Funding Request Memo.
So, we have a memo from Greg. This is asking that council consider applying again for this aid.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. So as you announced a couple meetings ago, Mr. Mayor, the city did receive some congressionally directed spending, I believe is the term. Earmarks was the old term. Through Congressman Stauber's office. They're opening that application period again for 2 weeks. And if you would like, we can put that application in again. City only got 750, but it's still 750. They do cap the ask on water wastewater projects at $2 million. So we'd probably put that in there along with our total project. Again, the schedule is a bit up in the air, but the fact that the city got some money, we're hoping for some bonding money. So I'd encourage you to reach out to your local reps here as the session starts. You could leverage that money potentially for some bonding or pair it with another one and start doing some of the work out there. So these are the application window is only open for a couple of weeks. So we can get it turned around here in a week or so and get it in, if that's what the council would like to do. And then, as it was kind of a surprise, we never know what their schedule is in Washington. But
Perfect.
I'd make the motion that you apply for it again.
We've got a motion from Kyle to apply for it again. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Dan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. Kyle?
Aye.
Dan?
I
I will also vote yes, that motion carries. All right, next up, let's move on to 7.2, proposed 2026 fee schedule update.
Attached is the updated fee schedule we made from council's suggestions, and then also is a memo explaining the reasoning for the department head's proposed fee schedule. However, there is an update that we need to make regarding permitting, the building official permits. There's been changes that we need to update those. So I asked that we not approve it so we can get those. We were notified yesterday, so we'd like to update that fee schedule and bring it back. And Lisa?
I have some information back to you guys on questions you had in the last meeting.
Okay.
Okay. from what I understand, you had a question regarding the general labor rate. You wanted clarification there. And what that is our hourly rate and benefits together, that's where those rates come from. So it went up by the percentage that we received for a raise. And so that's where that came from. The towing fee, you guys wanted to know if that was actual cost or if we could get to actual cost. There again, the towing is, we get charged $125 from the tow truck driver, plus then it figures in the time, my time, their time. So then it's exactly what it is, $200. The vac truck, that one you wanted to know if it should go up. And I talked with Matt today about it some more, and he said we could, if you guys agree, go up double, so it'd be 300 instead of 150 per hour. And when we let that truck go out, that's like to the county, to the city of Hinckley. If they were to request this, it's the vac truck, and then that would be that fee plus 2 operators is what it requires. And then the last one is, you wanted to know how many shutoffs in 24 and 25 for that. 24, we had 40 shutoffs, and 25, we had 47.
How many in 25? I'm sorry.
47.
And 24.
47. Thank you.
Yep, and 40 in 24.
Thank you. I had with the labor operator, that was one of my questions, is that does the rate that we're charging and increasing to, if we have to call in one of our contracted services, does that cover what our contracted service is going to charge for the labor or operator rate? Because if we need somebody to run an excavator, are we paying more than $147 an hour to our contracted service people? That was the question that I had.
Okay, and I don't know for sure. Without looking, we only had the one contractor come in with like the dump track and excavators, that kind of thing. And every one of the items is a different rate that he gave, so I would have to relook at that.
Well, if you're comfortable with it, that's all. I mean, Public
Yeah.
Works has looked at it, and that's market study, and that's what it was. Just
Yep, and Matt did say that he's looked at it, and he said going up to 300 would definitely be, it's not overly charging and it's not under then either.
Does the increase to 300, does that recoup the cost of that hour for the operators in the unit, or does it put it extra for?
The operators would be extra.
Okay.
They would be at the hourly rate of the general labor rate.
So does the 300 cover just the general
That would
operating
be
expense of it, or does
Yep.
it capture extra
Nope.
since we're providing the service?
It would be the equipment going out, they would cover that. So letting it go out, if there was anything that was to go wrong, it would cover the expense to fix it. That's what he was saying. We hope there was no fixing needed, but
Any other questions or comments from council? With the updates about the building officials, would you recommend tabling this or motion to table this for now?
I think Mr. Hill would probably want to participate in this one, so I guess I'll make the motion that we table it until we can figure out the software for Mr. Hill to be participant.
okay.
Thanks.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Kyle to table, second by Dan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. Kyle?
Aye.
Dan?
I
Will also vote yes, that motion carries. All right, next up, 7.3, committees, discussion and possible action, update on committee applications.
Attached is what was currently in place for the current committees. And then update on the applications was, I believe, do we have 6 now?
hooray!
No, we've received quite a few. So we've reached out to them that we received them. But what's been in place is if you put in an application showing interest into a committee, we would have them attend. So do we want to continue with having them attend that meeting in April if it's for a department meeting, and then letting that come back to council? Because that wouldn't be until probably May for that to come back to council.
This was a conversation that Marcy and I had about how in the past it was, yep, great, I'm glad you applied for a committee, please go to that meeting. If you're still interested, we'll proceed with the application. Well, that gets a little bit more difficult now that a lot of the meetings are switching to quarterly, where it might be 6 months before they come back and can start their first meeting. And I would hate for someone that has interest in being on a committee to lose in that interest over that 6 month time span, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I was originally put on planning commission by the previous mayor, he said, hey, you want to be on planning commission? I'll let you know when the first meeting is. And that's how we moved forward from there. And I'm not sure of the approval process at council at that point in time or how any of that worked. But I wanted to kind of see what council's opinion was as far as if I am John Public and I want to sign up to be on the EDA committee and there's an opening in the EDA committee and I know I want to be on EDA, do we still make them go to a meeting, come back, and go from there, or can we expedite that process if they know it's something that they're truly interested in?
My thought would be that if they apply for a committee, then we should just vote on it as a council and not require them to go to a committee meeting.
I like that. I think that takes a lot of guesswork out of things and a lot of, if they know they want to be on, if you go fill out the application and you X every single committee, maybe then it's time to do some due diligence and see which one fits best. But if you know you want to be on public works or you want to be on planning commission and there's an opening, I don't see a reason why we wouldn't just move forward, especially with the number of vacancies we have on our committees right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no,
See, I'm a firm believer that we should have applicants come before council and we should be able to ask questions of the applicants. I think that could be beneficial not only for the applicant but for council, instead of it being a consent item.
Okay.
I swear I was the only one that had to go before council and answer questions before I was on a committee. But it was very beneficial.
I do recall a couple other times where we've had participants come into council meetings and kind of present on themselves. So I do think it is beneficial. I just don't want to have to send them to a committee meeting only to come back, like you said, 6 months later.
Agreed.
So there's the 25 and the 26. I know that a couple of these have talked about, like in the fires case, can become twice a year instead of quarterly, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our committees don't have a quorum to meet. So setting the committees right now seems kind of weird since we, in some cases, don't seem to have a quorum to meet them.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we got to fill them before we can assign
Mm-hmm.
seats to them.
Yeah, that makes sense too. And then with the absence of a council member now, we will have to, that kind of throws up a lot of things into limbo again here too. So do we want to table the kind of keep going the way we're going and just table committee council member assignments for now and just?
We do have time to do that because we could also reach out to the applicants and say that we might be leaning towards just coming before council and then jumping on in when the meetings start back up. So,
Yeah, the only thing that I would say that the only concern that I would have is I want to make sure that if I am just a member of member of the public that has an interest in fixing our sidewalks, and that's my goal. We need to figure out a way to convey that you don't have to be a road and sidewalk engineer to be on the public. You can bring whatever experience you have. We're looking at the person, not the qualifications. I didn't have any planning experience when I was put on planning commission, but after many years, then it's kind of, you grow that experience. So as long as they're interested in it and want to stick with it, that's, personally, I'm open to anybody.
okay.
You need any kind of formal action on this? Or should we?
What about the committees that are going to be short a counselor? I have no problem stepping into some of those, but I feel that if nothing else, my opinion is that we should make sure we have counselors assigned to all of these committees, at least in a temporary fashion. That again is just I want to make sure committees feel supported by council.
I think you'll have at least one council member for every committee, the way it looks.
Yeah, and with Councilmember Hill, if he's unable to attend something, I can always step in for that meeting if need be, and I'm sure the rest of council would be happy to do the same if need be.
The other thing that could change if you do have so many applicants, obviously they're going to be applying towards the time that is currently set, but they might also have an idea on a better time that might set. Mm-hmm. So is it possible that they could end up causing a change in this too?
Because we did add that on the application now, whereas their preferred time slot.
Sure. Yeah, because like EDA, HRA, liquor, public works, and library all meet in the morning, and we get applicants. That just doesn't work for them.
So if council's fine, we can just bring this back again to the next agenda and see how it's progressed.
Yeah, and just leave it as an agenda item until we can.
If you're okay with that.
Get everything put together. That works for me. That works for you, Mr. Palmer? Perfect.
Okay.
All right, then we will move on to new business. Item number 8.1, water copper levels discussion and possible action. I added this, or asked to have this added to the agenda, and asked for Greg to be here to possibly answer some questions as far as, not to put you on the spot, where we are at with as far as filtration, and I know this isn't the first time we've had elevated levels of copper in our water. I know our water currently meets standards, but I also, on the other hand, know that if Minnesota rolls out the newer standards that they're thinking about moving to, we're kind of right on the fringe. Do you have any input as to, especially with our water rates being higher than our neighboring communities, I want to make sure that we're, in the long haul, giving our community members safe and drinkable tap water that doesn't need to be filtered in your house before you can consume it or anything like that. And I don't love to see elevated levels of anything in our water. That's kind of my personal thing, is I want to make sure that our residents are as safe and healthy and happy as they can be.
So Greg, I added the letter from the state, which when I read it, it sounds as though it's not coming from our tanks. It's coming from the transportation of it through the lines.
Through the actual individual household line. I brought stuff with too for that tonight. But I'm like, Greg wants to go first.
I think you're the expert here, Lisa. You're right. It's where you're taking the samples.
I can
take the samples in the system, but you're taking them off the side of the system.
Sure.
Okay. So from the Minnesota Department of Health, which you guys got the letter.
I think we just have to talk into the mic. I think Mr. Swanson's having a little trouble.
Like, yeah, tilted towards you more.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. From the Minnesota Department of Health, we did, and it's in your packet. It does say that our source water, which is our towers, our main lines, all of that, did not exceed the copper or the lead. So it's not coming from there. The catch-22 comes in because when we do our sampling, which we're required to twice a year now, we're doing 40 samples from individual households or businesses. They have to agree to do it, and they have to be approved as a site from the state, all of that. But when they take those samples from their household or their business, that's where the exceedance is coming in. Out of the 40 that we did here from July to December, there was 7 of them that exceeded our levels. And so that's where we then are told we have to notify everybody within the whole city. So that's where it goes into the paper, our website, Facebook, that we're notifying them that yes, we exceeded, but it doesn't give us, with the brochure that the state provides and that, it doesn't give us the thing to say, hey, this isn't everybody, it's these certain sites. So we have to notify everybody, and we have to send in a certification form, which we do, to let them know we have done that. And then we also have to send out the information to the 40 that we tested. And with that, we send out the copper fact sheet, the lead fact sheet, the brochure from the state. And if you look at each one of those, it's like the 3rd paragraph down, it says that it's exceeded in some homes and businesses or households. So it's definitely not our whole system. That is safe and fine to drink in that. It's in the homes because it's either the service line coming from the street in or their lines in the house that are leaching the copper.
Do those 7, are they scattered throughout the city, or do they identify areas?
They're scattered throughout, and they go by a site number. I have an address in that, so I know exactly where they are. But
and does it identify any kind of age of the house, or?
When they sign up, they have to give me the year the house was built, and so then they approve them. It depends on where they're taking these samples in their homes or businesses also. If, say they told me, hey, I'm taking it from the kitchen sink, but they actually go down to a slop place in the basement and take it, that could definitely change it.
I will say, and I'm not trying to raise any fear or any.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that when we're charging people $100 a month for water, that water is drinkable and
Correct.
will continue to be drinkable. Because I know I used to be on your list of copper samples, and I have no copper in my house. I have all PEX plumbing, and I had elevated copper levels. So somewhere between, it's not necessarily just in the house, I would say.
Yeah, it could be from the
somewhere
street
between
side
the water
into
tower
the house.
to my house is.
Yeah, it's the service line from the street to your house could possibly be it.
So I guess is there any ways to have more identifiable traits that they could be open to this, or are we gonna basically panic everybody, including the people that might have a house that's only 2 years old or something?
Well, I asked the lady stopped in last week from the state. I asked her if there was a different way that they could give us information to send out, that it's not saying, hey, everybody in the whole town, you know. And she said that we would have to reach out again to Jackie, that she's more knowledgeable than Jennifer was. So I have a call in to her to get back to me, because that was one of my fears when we have to notify everybody, that everybody in town is going to think that the water is no good, and that's not the case.
Is there a more comprehensive like a full panel lab that could be done on our system just to, so that we know that we're starting with a clean slate and
Well, we also have to, let's see, what do they call it? We've started doing a optimal corrosion control treatment plan where we have to test, and we're doing that constantly now. And that's where that letter came from the state saying it's not our source water, because we now have to do that also.
Is
guess
there
it's-
an ability, maybe this is one of the questions you're getting answered, but that what you described at the beginning of what you were saying of we take 40 samples and it's this many samples, is that something that the city could just type up a letter and send that along with, or is that not some? I think a lot of this could have been avoided, in my opinion, if we were able to include, we test 40, there was 7, and then it triggers the state that we send out all this stuff.
Well, the state is the one that provides us with the brochure and everything to send out. They don't want us to basically give out addresses. I mean, I suppose we could have sent something at the very top saying, hey, 40 sites and only 7 failed. But otherwise, it's the direct information that they give us to send out. And we do send it to the 40 that do test. We do send them their individual information, telling them.
And I mean, we can't put the toothpaste back in the tube now, but in my opinion, I think if we were able to tell people that from the get-go, like it isn't a water system problem, it's not a water source problem, it's by law we test 40, there were 7 that came back, so it triggers all this information that we're sending you. And
Right.
Again, that's just my opinion.
Right. Now, grant you, I would love to have lots more people sign up to be tested, because the other problem is it's the same 40 people on the list that are getting tested every time. And we do it twice a year, so it would be nice if more people would want to sign up to be tested
we push that.
for copper and lead.
We do a campaign next time, maybe let's get a more complete picture, and your help is required in this, and get your water tested, and we'll let you know exactly what's in there.
I know Lisa doesn't love my idea, but we also there could be a reward, because it is taking time of some of people's time to get their water, bring it back to us. And I mean, some cities issue a little credit to their account for participating in the study, which I think would bring more people to participate.
It could.
It could.
Right now, we take the bottle out to the people and we pick it back up. So we're not requiring them to do anything other than turn their tap on and fill the bottle and sign their name on paper.
First thing in the morning.
Yep, first thing in the morning.
And is the limit 40 locations, or can we have more than 40 samples?
The limit is 40. That's what they have us test. But like I said, if we had more of a pool, it wouldn't be the same sites, and we may not exceed the copper then. And the thing is, eventually, if we were to pass, I think they said twice in a row, it would go back down, because at one point we were only doing 10 or 20 samples, and it's increased because we have failed.
So I'm not necessarily opposed to the reward. My only question is, how do we manage it so everybody has equal rotation, or is it going to generate a point of favoritism, or kind of the perspective of favoritism?
It'll have to be like a randomizer. If you have an Excel sheet or a list that you kind of start at the top and work your way down, and then once you
It can't be a sample for X amount of years.
Yeah,
So when's your next batch? July?
We're going to be starting. It's now through June.
Okay.
So we just finished this one.
Okay.
Now I will be starting to call, but I have, with Jackie also, I've had 4 other people reach out saying that they would like to be added.
Oh, wonderful.
But I have to get them back on the spreadsheet, get them approved by the state before I can say, yes, we're going to test that site.
Does the state give you a pretty quick turnaround for approval?
Usually.
Okay.
Is there, if they provide a sample that comes back with high levels, are they penalized in any way where they have to replace it?
No. They just get the information along with the lead and copper fact sheets that tell them, you know, what they could do. So
I think that answers most of my, or most if not all of my questions. Dan, did you have anything else?
No, I'm just hopeful that our media partners will maybe pick up part of this conversation to help reassure the public that our source water is indeed safe to clean and clean to drink and use at home, and that these are results based on 40 tests and 7 were not compliant. I think that would be beneficial. Guy can hope, right?
I would like to ask if the media could also put something in that, hey, reach out to the city and sign up to be tested.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't we have some kind of notification app that would send out updates? I mean, is that some way that we can update the information and then ask for more samples too?
You could even send out, I'm assuming you could even
That's
send
great.
out like the fact sheet and whatever data. I'm a person that loves data, so you could send as much data my way, and like, oh, I can scroll through that and go, oh, this isn't a big deal, and that's
What is a deal? Big deal if you're one of those sample people.
absolutely.
I'm really thankful we had this conversation because I've been getting a lot of questions about it. So thank you for the information. It was very helpful.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. All right, let's move on then to item number 8.2, resolution number 2026-16, accepting LMC grant fund.
We received a $5,000 grant from the League of Minnesota Cities. I think it was Greg and I completed an application, maybe a year. Was it about a year ago? I know, just a few months ago. And we were awarded this grant funds and it needs to be accepted by resolution, but it's for our lead service lines.
Yeah, that wasn't that long ago.
It seems.
Perfect. Would someone like to make a motion to approve resolution 2026-16? Or are there any other questions?
I'll make a motion to pass or approve resolution 2026-16.
Motion from Dan. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second from Kyle. We'll proceed with the roll call vote. Kyle.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
And I will also vote yes. That motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is 8.3 Pine City EDA bylaws and EDA December 2025 financials.
Council had requested this to be added for any kind of review or discussion at the last council meeting. So attached are the December, because in the bylaws the financials are supposed to be attached annually. So you'll see the December 2025 financials that were presented at the EDA meeting, as well as the bylaws that were approved in 2024.
It did look like in the bylaws that moving financials from one institute to another requires a vote by the whole board commission. Was there a special meeting set afterwards to try and fix what had been done beforehand?
Yeah, there was a special meeting because they approved at the original meeting. They approved to have a CD cashed out, which requires approved minutes, to another bank, which we did not have as an approved financial location. So we had the special meeting to correct.
But it was done after the fact, right?
Yes, the minutes then noted the conflict of interest, which then at that meeting they approved the minutes. And also there was a resolution presented to accept that financial institution as an approved location for the EDA. So we did two things to kind of correct what had been done.
And everybody on the commission has, or on that committee has a copy of the bylaws and is familiar with the bylaws.
That I cannot say if it's true.
My other question is that it's, I think it outlines a 4-year term. And I'm wondering when the last time a person was appointed to that committee, and is anybody coming up in the near future where it would open up a possible vacancy for an application?
We have 2 that just expired end of January of this year.
Are those positions being advertised as open positions for committees?
I do not know if they're on our list on the website. Because one is not returning. One would like to return.
But we should be advertising that, if whether it's 1 or 2, realistically it's 2. And then it's up to the council to decide who fills the positions. Limits of power number 1. Can you just kind of break that down for me?
I don't have it in front of me.
It says the city council may by resolution require the authority to transfer any portion of the reserves generated by activities of the authority that the city council determines is not necessary for the successful operation of the authority to the debt service fund of the city, to be used solely to reduce the tax levies for bonded indebtedness of the city. Has the council ever brought any money back? Under limits of power, Article 8.
In the bylaws too, it also says that we're supposed to be presented as council annually what the management structure, what the controls are, and what the expenditures and funding is going to be spent on for the year by the authority. And I don't believe this is my second year. I haven't seen it. And I was attending council meetings for years before, and don't recall ever seeing that presentation.
So we've got some work to do as well.
Yes.
I don't know how this works, but according to the bylaws of the EDA, that the EDA is the one that can make changes to their bylaws. But I have some requests. I don't know if we can request to have them look at it on their next agenda, or how this part works, and maybe I should. But like, for instance, under Article 3 on page 1, number 2, commissioners shall be appointed to 4-year terms starting February 1, expiring on January 31. When the terms expire, a new appointment shall take place, and any subsequent appointment shall be 4-year terms. A member may serve as many terms as the mayor and council want to reappoint them. I'm of the opinion that that needs to be changed to match what city policy is for committees and commissions. And right now it's in direct contrast to that. Another thing, sorry, let's get through my pages here. Article 6, conflicts of interest under number 7. This is something that I think would be important to review with the EDA before taking an action or making a decision, which could substantially affect the commissioners' or employees' financial interests, or those of any organization which the commissioner or employee is associated. A commissioner or employee of the authority shall disclose the potential conflict and follow the requirements of Minnesota statutes that are listed. I feel that needs to be looked at, and some reassurances given to the city and to council as far as that's concerned. Under the Article 7, the limits of powers, number 4, the ability of the authority to participate as limited partner in development project must have prior approval of the city council. I believe that there has been development projects that this authority has taken place in that have not been approved by city council, and maybe just by the authority. Underneath that, number 5, all official actions of the authority must be consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan of the city and any official controls implementing the comprehensive plan. That's another thing that I, as a council member, feel that this authority needs to take a look at, because I don't think that those things line up. And the last one is number 6 there. The authority must submit administrative structure and management practices to the city council for approval and conduct its affairs consistent with those structures and management practices. Again, I haven't seen them. Doesn't mean that they haven't been presented, but I don't recall ever seeing them. And same with under the annual budget, the treasurer shall prepare an annual budget projecting anticipated expenses and sources of revenue. Said budget shall be reviewed by the authority and submitted to the city council for approval by August 1st each year, or follow the budget process for city departments. So again, I don't know. There's a minor change there, but I feel like, as we talked about at our last meeting, that a deeper dive and some stronger controls over what's happening with this authority are in order. But that's just my opinion.
How many projects have EDA taken on in the last year or the last couple of years? Maybe what projects? I think there was some concern over projects undertaken at the last council.
There was I'm trying to think back just off my memory here. I know we had a loan, an EDA loan that was written out for a local unit of business that they asked for an extension. I'm trying to remember now. Did they ask for an extension or did they ask for more money? I think they asked
both.
Well, both. And we offered them what the cap was, maximum of the cap was. They didn't ask for whatever the cap that you can ask for is originally. So we said we would go up to that mark and potentially extend the loan, but I don't know that that went anywhere. I think they found other funding sources.
Because one of the concerns is it seems like the operational controls is a concerning factor. It doesn't seem like the development is taking place. I'm wondering, and maybe it's not a popular conversation, but does the city EDA still make sense for the city, or is this an entity that would be better managed by a different entity that had more operational controls?
It's a great question.
I don't know that I have the answer to that question. That is a great question. I know at EDA there was recently a survey that was put out to see what the visibility was of EDA loans and things like that, and there were a handful of applicants, and of the handful of applicants, I want to say a large portion of them had no idea that the EDA had funds that they could be borrowed from. So I think there's a little bit of projects have been slow, of the quality or of the type of project that would be asking for an EDA loan, I would say. And if those projects have been existing in the past year, I can't think of, I don't want to put myself on the spot here, but I can't think of many or any that we've pushed through EDA.
One of the concerns that I have is that EDA is designed to help stimulate economic development and help people that are already in business continue to grow and nurture their businesses with low interest access to capital that may not be accessible through a bank. Maybe they're past that bank lending part and they just need a little bit more. We continue, this authority continues to go for a max levy, and we're not investing that money back into the community. We're investing it into a balance sheet. And that balance sheet continues to grow year over year, but the funds aren't being utilized, in my opinion, are not being utilized for any programming. If you look at the financials that were presented in December, and you just look at the RLF and some of the loan windows that are there hasn't been a loan given in quite some time, and most of them are already paid off. So what is the goal of the authority? Why are we continuing to max levy and build a balance sheet and not build business and economic activity?
I would agree with that. So I think either we have to look at pulling those funds back, or looking at possibly giving it to an entity that might have more resources to push economic growth throughout the territory.
I agree. I mean, fund balance right now of almost $600,000 is that's a significant amount of money.
I think the EDA has been effective and in qualifying for projects. I know I'm thinking back a few years now, you've got, there was a EDA loan to Lakeside, there was an EDA loan for the senior living community up by the courthouse. There's a bunch of loans that have been given out, and I don't know if it was COVID that kind of stopped that, like a car hitting a wall, or what we need to do to reinvigorate that if we're going to keep moving forward.
And how many of those projects had tax abatements for X number of years associated with them?
The Timber Pines.
There's one project on this list, and that tax abatement status is in limbo, from what I understand from a couple different sources. Potentially, I don't know.
Correct.
Because the concern with the max levy, how much economic development is being pushed, and how is that benefiting the taxpayers at the end of the day if all those properties are ending up on tax abatements? I understand, yes, they pay some, but resources are needed to provide services for those facilities. I don't know that we have the operational controls to make it necessarily beneficial for it to be city owned.
Should we go as far as to have direct staff to look at what other EDAs do, look at their bylaws, look at their business practices, and compare and contrast, and go from there? That seemed like a logical next step.
It wouldn't hurt. I'd like to have.
I think that. Sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Palmer. I'm sorry.
I would just like to continue the conversation to see, are we correcting the situation, or do we need to take other steps?
And I would like from the authority, in my opinion, is an update on what types of activity have been undertaken for 2026, what types of activity are projected for 2026, and what types of monies they need to successfully operate and staff the authority to what they need as per the bylaws.
I would agree with that.
Would you like them to be invited to the next council meeting?
Yes.
All right. Do we need motions for any of this, or can we just?
I'm good.
Perfect. All right. Moving on to item number 8.4, discussion and possible action regarding contracted building official. I asked to have this added to the agenda, just because, if for no other reason, I think it's time that we take a look at our building official resources. They've been with us for about 5-ish years at this point in time. I know Councilmember Hill stated some concerns about permit fees for water heaters and furnaces and things like that. I think it may just be time to, in my opinion, I would say that the best thing to do would be throw an RFP out there, invite everybody to respond, invite their current vendor to respond, and do a apples to apples comparison for everything and see where we land.
I don't disagree with that. Having information's good. I want to make sure that if it's going to be apples to apples, then all the credentialing and certification falls under the individual and the company itself, and it's not under other people or other resources. They also want to make sure that there's operational controls that inspector or inspector company is solely doing inspections inside the city of Pine City and doesn't have any other financial interest in other projects or businesses.
I will say that my thoughts and concerns aren't about the compliance of code and code competency. We've had some business misalignments, I will call them, over the past couple months, and that's just a cause for concern as we are reaching what I would consider to be a growth phase, and I don't think we can afford to continue having those sort of.
I'll second what Mr. Palmer said. By if we're going to go out for an RFP, I think it is of utmost important to make sure that the RFP is clear in all services that we are currently getting from our building official, and that the RFP matches what they're able to do. A lot of plan reviews, electric reviews, sprinklers. I mean, there's a lot of things that take special certifications that if we're going to look to make that change, I think it's just very important that it's exactly what service we're getting from the company we're using now. And I'll throw a curveball or a wrench in the gears here. I also am in favor of potentially looking at, can we make a job out of this? Do we have the ability to maybe create a position within city staff where they are this person and perform this function? It may have to be hybrid with some other things. Maybe allows us some latitude to redo some position plans with other positions and take some work from some and put into that position. But for me, I look at the amount of money that we send for that specific service, and I feel that we might be able to create an in-house, create a job, create a position that might be able to be of service to other communities. I mean, there's a whole bunch that might be able to come from it, but just another thought while we're thinking about this.
Yeah, I guess I will say I'm of the firm belief that I would rather pay a person than a company for something. So if that is an option, I think that would also be great. I think it's going to be easier to stand up a program with a company that already exists than stand up a program from scratch, but I've never dealt with that in that aspect of things before. So
would council be interested in having staff put together the RFP for a building official as well as a posting for an internal hire and bring it back for council approval?
So for an RFP external posting and an internal posting? Is that what you said?
Yeah, to have it be an RFP for a business to take on, or as well as a posting for someone who does hold these certifications who would be employed by the city.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense as long as that follows all of our RFP guidelines and posting guidelines.
Yeah, I guess as long as there's the understanding that just because the program for the internal position might be posted, we could still choose to go with the contracted service.
You can run that through LMC or our attorney and see if they have some pointers as to how to ask those questions or post those positions to.
And I guess just for the sake of asking, do we have any kind of general idea on what the salary would be for an internal position with somebody that would hold those credentials?
I Googled it, and I will just say I don't know that is the correct answer, but it was somewhere between 75 and 150.
And that's what you'll see on the league or government jobs. Write up both and bring them back for council to look at.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Sounds good to me.
You want that in a motion form, Marcy? Or
yes, please.
I would make a motion to move ahead with both the internal and external application and RFP process for building officials in the city of Plain City.
I'll second.
Motion by Kent, second by Kyle. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed with a roll call vote. Kyle?
Aye.
Dan?
I
And I will also vote yes, that motion carries. All right, here next we're moving on to item number 8.5, resignation of Councilmember Gina Petty. We received a notification today that Councilmember Petty is resigning from her position on the City Council of Pine City, effective today. So I think at this point we would just want to acknowledge her resignation as a council.
we have to acknowledge by resolution, I believe, to recognize the but yeah, I think it has to be done by resolution
If you'd
to
like,
acknowledge the vacancy.
we could, we have an assigned number we could give it and have that resolution 2026 17.
And then if we do acknowledge the vacancy, it starts the clock, correct? As to how long we have to be able to do something about it.
Yes, upon council's approval. Yeah, 18, that's what I thought.
You remember going down this road not too long ago?
Yeah.
If you wanted to approve the vacancy, the resolution would be 2026-18.
So the term is less than 2 years. I think under state statute 412.02, it means that either we could check with ordinance about a special election, or it'd be by vote of the council. Mr. Swanson, is that?
That's how I understand it too. Being under 2 years, that it's an appointment and not a special election. If it was over 2 years, it would be a special election.
Correct.
If more than 2 years remained. That's how I understand it.
Do you know what that time window is? Do we have time to, if we acknowledged her resignation tonight, do we have time to then discuss the next steps as far as, I guess, or
30 to 60 days, I believe, is the.
Or we could bring the resolution back to the next agenda if you're more comfortable.
Let's do that.
Okay.
And come up with a couple options as for path forward. I think that
the only challenge is that if the resignation is effective immediately, do we honor that resignation, or do we, like you said, wait to bring it back to the next council meeting and not honor the resignation?
I'm of the opinion, if it needs to be done by resolution, that perhaps we can informally recognize it tonight and formally recognize it at the next meeting. That's just my opinion.
I think that makes sense, and then that way staff can have a better path forward for what comes next.
Yes, we'd have the updated resolutions for the mayor and the interim mayor.
Yeah, deputy mayor.
And also, we do have Councilor Petty as a signer on the bank, so we'd want to update the signers via resolution, so we can have those all prepared for the next agenda.
Do we have the ability to do that per the state statute, or if the letter has been given, are we obligated under state statute 412.02 to recognize it at this council meeting?
Not sure. I know at the last one we took a while to acknowledge it.
Yeah, last time it did take a while.
The last time, didn't you guys accept it right away? That would have been the last.
And that was.
It was not accepted by resolution it was accepted by resolution
Next council meeting.
I'm pretty sure that we recognized the other one too right away. It just started the clock with the 60 days. It became a battle of council meetings.
I'm not an expert in this situation, so excuse the confused look on my
Mhm.
face.
It was received this afternoon. So the agenda was already posted.
I would like to take a moment to thank Councilmember Petty for her years of service to the city of Pine City. I regret her resignation, and just we also want to state that.
Time on the statute. Doesn't say like a certain amount of days, it just says as soon as possible. We don't have the resolution. And like Councilor Swanson said, do an informal acknowledgement of it, and then at the next meeting we'll have all the proper documentation.
I don't know if I'd want to even informally recognize it, because then you're almost publicly admitting that I guess I don't really feel comfortable moving it down the road, because it is what it is.
So due to the timing and when the agenda came out, we just table it until the next meeting with the proper resolution written, and that allows us to handle the rest of the resolution business too, being signers and deputy mayor and those things.
Yeah, because as long as that would fall in before the other changes, I think that would be fine.
What if that individual decides to come back at the next council meeting?
No, I think that's a risk we're gonna have to take. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I don't feel super duper comfortable making a motion on a resolution that doesn't physically exist at this point in time. Would someone you need a motion to table this, or a motion to? I don't have a great idea as to how to move forward per se here, unless we just informally acknowledge it and bring the documentation forward next month or 2 weeks from now.
Sounds like a good motion.
We'll make that as a motion. Do I hear a second to informally recognize the resignation of Councilmember Petty and bring forth all documentation next meeting? Okay, motion fails due to lack of a second. Would someone like to make a different form of a motion?
I would make a motion that we address the vacancy by resignation at our next council meeting by a qualified resolution.
All right, I've got a motion from Dan. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second from Kyle. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed with the roll call vote. Kyle.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
I will also vote yes. That motion carries. All right, just moving on to committee updates now. HRA met yesterday. Some pretty exciting things on the table. We have been found to be I can't remember if I've said this previously in a council meeting, but we've been found to be very competitive, or in the top tier of competitiveness for the small cities grant that we've applied for. As far as the grant, though, there is a caveat where if we were to receive the grant funds, we would either have to retain the building for a period of 5 years, or upon the transfer of the building, we would have to repay those funds back to the state of Minnesota.
Did we just find out about that, or was that known at the time of the application?
Found out about it at last meeting, or as yesterday's meeting. With that being said, there was also an update on the RAD conversion, which would allow the building to transition to a different entity, because right now it's HUD funded. So the way it's set up as public housing, it would have to get changed to some other form of a property before it could be transferred. RAD conversion was thought to be the silver bullet. Prior to Tuesday's meeting, Mrs. Sauter spoke with the HRA director from Duluth City HRA, and she is recommending what's called a Section 18 disposition, which would convert the project out of public housing into Section 8 housing, and actually allow it to cash flow. Right now, what we're running into is with the funding coming from HUD. Shoot, I forgot my notes. The HUD funding coming from HUD, I want to say each unit gets about $95 to $150 a month in funding from HUD. So we have what the federal government is giving us to operate this building is $150 a unit a month, basically. Whereas if it was converted to a Section 8 housing, the tenants may not pay any more money for their rent. It would still be the same equation as far as rents would go. But the building would then, rather than recouping that $90 a month or $150 a month, they would be recouping that portion of based on what low income rates are within the community. So it'd be $500 or $600 a month per unit, roughly, allowing the building to kind of become self-sufficient again. With what we've seen is the reduction of federal funds to housing projects. It's kind of, since the building was built in the 60s, it's gone down a little bit every year. I think this could be our silver bullet as far as getting the building fixed and getting into a point where it's cash flowing, and it could move on to a different organization that could manage it, or on the other hand, you could leverage those funds if it's cash flowing to fund some of the HRA programs throughout the city. So some home rehabilitation programs and other programming that the HRA has always tried to do, but never been very successful, with the elephant in the room being the foundation issues of the current Hillside Court Department.
So, just to recap on that, you want to take money out of a self-sufficient building, possibly to fund other projects.
Potentially.
And so, I feel like that's the concern that happened originally, is that money got pulled out of the budget and allocated to other resources.
The thing that, from what my understanding is, that's different now, is we go away from this is how much money you get from the federal government, this is what you're operating with, to more of because the building would then be spun off as its own LLC, with the HRA as the primary owner, or whoever the primary owner is being an HRA. You're going to get to a point where you're cash flowing more than you need in your reserves to take care of maintenance, is the hope. And again, being able to borrow to fund other HRA or taking money out of that account to fund other HRA things would be a hope. The biggest thing would be ensuring that the building is cash flowing and making money and being able to take care of itself, and we're not back in the position for it.
So ultimately, with the HRA at that point, if it was an LLC under the HRA, would that be under a different entity, or would that still be under the city?
It would still be, if we kept everything as is, did a section 18 disposition, it would be an LLC solely owned by the HRA.
With no ties or connections to the city,
With no ties to
or obligations.
But we are very early phases. We just found out about this section 18 disposition on Friday and had our meeting on Tuesday. So there's a lot more research that needs to be done. With the proceeding, if we choose to proceed with the small cities development loan, it may run into issues where I think part of the stipulation of that loan is if it can't change ownership within 5 years, does that mean it can't move from city to LLC? And I think there's a lot of questions that are still looking for answers at this point in time. So I'll know more next month, but I don't have a whole lot more information than that.
And I guess I do have major concerns because those obligations were things that I asked up front, and nobody seemed to know about it, or nobody seemed to think that there was any obligations. And yet again, the wrong information was communicated to us. So my trust in this whole project is quickly dropped.
I understand that.
I also think that there has to be some kind of long-term plan that if grant funding doesn't happen, how are we going to fix this? Because at this point, I'm not going to count on government handouts to try and fix a project that hasn't been fixed for X number of years.
If, from my understanding with our meeting on Tuesday, if we were not awarded the small cities development grant, we could proceed with the section 18 disposition, and then you begin banking those funds. The concern there is we have some federal dollars that have been saved for the foundation issues that are going to expire at in a certain amount of time. So we just want to verify and make sure all of our ducks are in a row, I guess, is kind of we've had a lot of information that was dropped on us 2 days ago or yesterday, and we're still trying to disseminate it. But that's all I have for HRA. Snake River for post meeting, we met with the group a couple, 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Sounds like there's strong interest from a couple organizations to be the lead on this. Marcy and I will continue attending the meetings just to see if there's any aid that the city can provide this process. But
and possibly another council member would like to attend.
If another council member would like to attend, there is an opening on that meeting as well. A lot of good information. Seems like things are moving a lot quicker than we anticipated, I guess I would say.
I'm sorry, I spaced it, but recap, who would be the sponsoring party?
I hate to put the cart before the horse.
Not the city.
But it would not be the city. It sounds like it would either be the county or another organization. But those meetings are once a month. I think we have another coming up in March. If anybody else would like to attend. That's really all I have as far as that update, unless I missed anything, Marcy. Perfect. Item number 10, work session planning.
I don't know if this is a work session planning topic or if this is something we'll handle in a regular meeting, but do we want to look at putting together a work session or making sure we have time in a regular meeting to discuss the draft potential fire district study as a council? Or are we going to do that a different way. I feel with some of the information that's coming to light, it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose for me. And there's some there's some big decisions that have to be made. Just throwing it out there.
Yes, and I don't know. I think they decided on the next meeting last night. The next meeting is going to be March 11th, 7 p.m. is their next meeting at Pine City Township Hall.
It would be kind of nice though, as just the council, to be able to sit down and discuss it publicly, whatever, about all the implications that were outlined in that study. Sometimes I feel like when we go to those fire committee meetings, that it's everybody else has an opinion, and our opinion is maybe low on the ladder. So I would like to sit down with my fellow council members and kind of hash out all the implications that were in that study.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
After last night's meeting, I think it would be very beneficial for council to have this work session prior to the March 11th meeting. Our next council meeting is the 4th.
Is it something that we want to have sooner in case we need to have an additional meeting if we need more information? Or, I mean, we really don't have all that much time, to be honest.
Yeah. If we wanted to look at next week, I would be free every day but Wednesday. If that's enough time to. Oh, Marcy's out of town that next week. End of next or second half of next week. Or all
Monday through Friday.
Okay. So then we would be looking at the first week in March.
And do the questions or the discussion, do we have to have you present for that, or is this going to be questions and answers with the fire chief?
Yeah, I think that even if Tom were present, I could be present.
Virtually?
Yeah, virtually.
Well, if you're on vacation, I don't want to pull you away from your vacation. It's just I just wonder if it's a lot of questions that are oriented around fire questions. I don't know.
I definitely believe it's important for council to meet prior to March 11th. And I think Tom and I would probably like to both be there, but I'm comfortable if it's just Tom too, because Tom and I are on the same page. So.
And I'm only asking in the off chance that we need to have an additional work meeting. Are we going to be limited to 1 week, trying to cram in multiple sessions without any time to research any more information? I mean, if it was a work session that had a very clear-cut time limit, bring your questions, ask them, and we have to come back and follow up with the answers.
But at least get the discussion out of what's been going on. I think just to update council, because not all of council is attending these meetings, and I just feel like there's a lot to update you on, and I feel very comfortable with Tom speaking on my behalf as well. So.
Or we can wait. I don't care. I want to give us enough time. So.
If we did it on March 4th, which is our regularly scheduled meeting, we would have 1 week till the next township fire district meeting.
I don't want to bind it up with a council meeting.
Okay.
A normal council meeting. I'd like it to be its own separate one. Maybe it does make sense to wait until that week, but I think there's going to be questions that are longer than a council meeting that could be 6 hours.
We also have March 2nd and 3rd, if you're interested in doing it on either of those days.
Either one of those would work for.
Tom, how does that work for you? Tuesdays usually. Me too. I don't have anything. Could we do a work session at 5:30 or 5, whichever works better for you on the 2nd, which would be a Monday, March 2nd?
If 5:30 is an option, that'd probably
Sure.
be better.
Sure.
Yeah, that works for me. Mr. Swanson, does that
Yep,
work?
I can. Yep, that works for me.
And we'll make sure we're up and running so Mr. Hill can be present as well, because I know he'll want to be a part of this.
Are we gonna have that here for availability, or
Let's do it here.
if
Oh.
it's available?
Yeah, because this is rented till 4:30, so we'll have it set up in time for 5:30. 5:30 is actually helpful, gives us an hour to get ready.
We could also have it at the fire hall if that's easier.
Whatever.
I just need to make sure that the room is available if we're gonna have it here.
No, it's not.
So
Nope. Okay. That was the fire hall on Monday. So what I hear is March 2nd, Monday, 5:30 at the fire hall for a work session for council to be updated and have discussion on the fire study that's been going on with Pine City and the townships.
do we want to set a limit to how long the meeting is, or is it kind of a la carte free for all?
I would think 1 hour would be sufficient.
Call it an hour and a half.
Yeah,
just
we
to be
use
safe.
at the max. No longer than an hour and a half.
Mr. Swanson, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's good with me. I was gonna say 45 minutes, but hour and a half is fine. This is important stuff.
Not to exceed. I mean, if we're done in 45 minutes, we could be done. Okay, thank you for that.
All right. Any other questions or comments on work session planning? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the mayor's report. This is an update on January 21st, 2026 council session. This is just a update that's going out. The city staff inadvertently omitted the parcel data ID description from the closed session meeting held on January 21, 2026. The omission was administrative in nature and did not affect the properties discussed or the substance of the meeting. The parcel IDs discussed were 42.0226.000 and 42.0223.000. Staff will ensure complete information is included in future agendas. That's all I have for that. Do we have any council concerns?
Just one. Just back to our planning session. That's going to be an open meeting, correct? And is the fire study going public or being released to the public? Since it's a public meeting.
During the meeting yesterday, did say this was still for greater question. He did mention for the participants. So I can reach out to Mr. Smith. If you'd like us to.
I don't know how anybody would be able to discuss it and talk about it with their respective boards if it couldn't be put in an agenda as a, I don't think it's the agenda, it's public data, but I'm not a lawyer nor am I an expert, so.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda, so I don't know.
I mean, we're not hosting the actual study, preliminary study. This could just be a discussion on what's been going on in the actual update.
Discussion and update.
Or we would be releasing the packet.
I would say that we would hold the meeting now, but we could get some clarification. Yeah, we still have time to post it as a meeting. So
Just find out if you're what.
Awesome. Any other council concerns? Hearing None. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Kyle. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second by Dan. Roll call vote. Kyle.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
I also vote yes. That motion carries. Perfect. Meeting is adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Night, Dan. Thank
Night,
you.
Dan.